you have 70% of people who have positive impacts from immigration. And then the 30% of people who don't are the ones that make the loudest noise.
Of course, that's how it works.
And it's sad because the minority is almost acting without data.
Yeah.
And when they finally get their way, the repercussions is going to be really unhealthy and dangerous to us. So I think it's very important to make people aware that we've made this mistake before, and it makes it so urgent to not make this mistake again.
Yeah.
What I think is missing now is being able to have this conversation from a data-driven perspective.
Yes.
To be able to actually capture the value, right? So as an international student, I came here, I was paying all these high fees in school. Now, San Francisco gets the luck of me like being a successful entrepreneur here, being able to pay for, taxes and pay, home taxes. But that's not the truth for every immigrant. Like a lot of that value is lost along the way while we're thinking, but
All right, welcome to another exciting episode of GWP.
Yeah.
Man, Bissy, I'm so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for taking the time to come out.
Thank you, brother. I mean, thanks for introducing me to your community, and thanks for just bringing your beautiful smile to the show today. I'm excited to be here and share all about everything.
Thank you. And if you're listening to this episode, I want you to know we're so fortunate to have Bissy with us on here. A little bit about Bissy. He is a multifaceted brother. I mean, he's a DJ, he's an entrepreneur, he's an author, and many other things. And today, I'm so excited to dive into some of these things, most specifically with your startup, which is JustiGuide. Super excited to hear all about that. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, you said a few of the things. Multifaceted human being. I'm BC. I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, and all the different roles that I've occupied allowed me to basically own my skills, to be able to adapt quickly, read people, and be able to build a company like JustiGuide, where we're solving the complexities of immigration and making it simple for immigrants and lawyers. So I'm happy to be here and just share on how I've come about all of that. And
in a world today where many of us struggle with figuring out our identity, figuring out who we are, social media, especially if you're a man, they're talking about your masculinity, what makes you masculine, and so on. And so identity is such an important topic these days. For you, it seems like you've embraced that identity and you've been able to be a multifaceted person. What does it mean to be multifaceted?
I think for me, at the core of it is just this deep curiosity to continue to learn. The story of how I got into music was I grew up in a culture that was musical. I was singing and dancing. And for me, I was always curious, like, what is at the core of this experience that brings us together, that is building this culture? What were the intentions of our ancestors to create this? And even as I explored Christianity, which was the religion I was raised in, it was always my curiosity to understand what were the dreams of my ancestors. And so as soon as I could get my hands on the guitar when I moved to the US, that's what I started to explore. It's like, what does it mean to be musical? What does it mean to bring that story along with me? And that, I think, is the way that I get into a lot of the things that feel like who I am. It's that pursuit of wanting to learn. It's that practice of evolving with the art form and the skill set that I find important to my wellness and my being. And so that's how I've picked up, my curiosities around urban planning, the books I like to read, my interest in history, and wanting to understand how people affect their built environment, how people make decisions, and how we can make these decisions or collaborate at scale to do things better. I think it's just at the core of like wanting to learn and be a better human, to leave the world a better place in the short time that I've got here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you talk about curiosity, because especially being a multifaceted person, I feel like curiosity is so important, right? Because you're finding something and you're double clicking on it to figure out what's going on there, right? How do you go about cultivating that curiosity, especially in the world today where we're so distracted with social media that it's so difficult to be curious about something and say, you know what, I'm going to spend that 1,000 hours on this one thing and become really good at it. I'm going to pick up DJing and I'm going to spend a few more hours every single day after whatever I do and get really better at it. I'm going to pick up this running thing, right? And every single day I'm going to run a little faster and become one of the best runners in the world. How do you go about cultivating that curiosity to make sure you're becoming the best at what you pick up to do?
That's a very good question. I think that one of my favorite sayings when I was growing up, I had a lesson teacher, so I studied French for 13 years, and it says, petit la petit, oiseau fait son nid. It says, little by little, a bird lays his nest. And it's that practice of, okay, I'm not going to sound as good as I want to be today. I'm going to be better. I'm going to be better than I was yesterday. And the story of how I wrote my book is exactly that. I'm not going to do 5 years of research in 1 year. This is an interest of mine. So I'll read a book here, I'll read a book here. But at the end of the day, the book came together because I was just taking 17 minutes out of my day to pen what I remembered from my research. And that's how the book came about. So 5 months later, 17 minutes a day aggregated to enough, notes to then say, oh, this is a pretty comprehensive book that I can share with people. This is a pretty comprehensive song. Every 15 minutes of a guitar lick, it's a build. And building as a practice is what I think people today need to remember. And I think that's the behavior that maybe social media has taken away, is that you get that like injection of like dopamine hit from releasing something very quickly, but the build is a longer play. It's the scribble, it's the weird odd notes, it's the months and months that your voice hasn't matured to the note that you want to hit, but like still giving it a shot every opportunity you get. It's the taking the gig that you're like, man, I just did 8 hours. I got a DJ now, but it's saying, yes, I'm going to DJ because, yeah, it might not be my best set, but I'm going to learn from this opportunity. I'm going to take away something that I didn't have the other day. So the combination of deepening that practice of wanting to be better, of wanting to take every experience to like make yourself better, is how, I think I've cultivated the persistence. And I think persistence is really how you really, that's deep work. You don't do it for 15 minutes and feel like you've learned everything. And that's going back to the curiosity. If you double click, you read more, you double click. I get into so many Wikipedia holes because I'm just like, wait, who was King Henry? Wait, who gave birth to him? Okay, oh, what? And then the more you go deeper, the better understanding you have. And the longer you stay with it, the more rounded you are as a person.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that topic, deep work. And most people may not understand what that really means. But again, if you're trying to get really good at something, if you're trying to write a book, a meaningful book for that matter, something that people can pick up and read and get value out of it, you need to cultivate that deep work. And my understanding of deep work, correct me if I'm wrong, is being able to put blinders on and pick up something and get to the nitty gritty of it. I mean, you're getting to the details of it and the details of the details. Am I correct to sort of think of deep work like that?
No, absolutely. And one of my favorite stories around deep work, and I think I read about deep work about when I was 21. And the idea being that it was about when people were starting to argue that there's no more long form writing and people are just writing shorter and shorter posts because of social media and Twitter was taking off. And I remember thinking to myself that deep work, some of Einstein's best work happened when he was able to just shut the world out, be in a room for many months and be able to do the same. And then I started learning some of my favorite writers, Maya Angelou. She would rent a hotel, take out all the art. And it's this ability to be like, I can withdraw from everything going on. And so my hack for getting myself to that place, because in the world, the older we get, the harder it is.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't have the convenience to be able to just like hide themselves from the world. So what I try to find is, what is that thing that can excite me so much that I can just zone in? I remember picking up the DAW and wanting to record a song. And I think it was the cover of Hold Ya. The very first time I was like, I'm gonna try and make a remix. And I spent so many hours. I feel like I did not talk to anybody for 2 days just in my studio trying to make this cover. And the moment I got that, I was like, this is the skill set, right? The ability to just put the blinders on, like you said, and like deeply disconnect so that you can just like follow that curiosity all the way. It's hard to do, but you have to find that like thing that is getting you in the flow, and you get into a flow state after many hours of just looking at the same problem over and over again.
Yeah. And I feel like we're uncovering so many different topics that we didn't necessarily even intend to cover. But these are things that I'm so curious about. And so forgive me, but you just mentioned flow. And, you know, and the reason why these things are important that I'm double clicking on it is because we're talking about entrepreneurship and building wealth through entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship is actually really, really difficult. And most people know that, you know, most startups end up failing. And it's not because the founders want to fail. Some of these founders are coming out with the most brilliant ideas and they want to succeed. They really want to solve big problems, great problems, add value and create value for people. But that's just the reality of it. But sometimes the difference between succeeding and failing is being able to do some of these things that we're mentioning, having the tenacity to be able to do that deep work, right? Being able to hit that flow state multiple times in a day or multiple times in a week. That way you're able to put those blinders on and do something really brilliant. And coming up with something brilliant takes a long time. I remember I was just talking to someone recently and we were talking about coming up with an idea to start a business or a company or solve a problem. And I remember what I was telling them was it requires thinking. And when I say thinking, it's not just thinking once. You think and then you think and then you think and then you think and then you think. You're literally blocking time out just to think. How many people are doing that these days? Barely happening. So I love that we're talking about flow and deep work and all these like amazing things, which is really important, especially if you want to be a successful entrepreneur.
I believe you, and I totally agree. You know, I want to tell the story of when I built the prototype, you know, similar. I was like, I've been in San Francisco for a while now. I saw AI and I was like, you know what? I'm going to challenge myself to learn something very quickly because of AI. So while the world was saying AI is going to do all these things, I was like, okay, what is the coolest thing that I find about this technology? Oh, I could close a learning gap with this because I was finding that I could debug code just by putting in ChatGPT. So I'm like, okay, like let's try. So I watched a YouTube video. I built a prototype, which is just like a, legal, chatbot. That was it. Just prompt engineering. Gave this to a few friends. Everyone said like asking me different things. Oh, my insurance, the thing. Oh, my immigration, the thing. Okay, immigration. Interesting. Double click on that, right? Oh, so 25 people, how are you using this? Oh, this other thing. So to kind of riff off what you were saying, it's not the original idea I started with that the company is today, but it's the continual conversing with that idea, like chipping all the, shaving the wood and like really seeing at the core of it, which is the spiritual journey for the entrepreneur, is like, what do I have to uniquely bring to this thing that I'm uncovering that is going to make it successful, that is going to be uniquely me, that is going to be uniquely my perspective, because every day that I rumble with this idea, in order to make it succeed, I have to ask myself that question is what can I uniquely bring to this problem that anybody out there today is not? And that's the depth I think that makes it start to feel so exhilarating when you get through a year of ideating and trying to figure out the market and if it's worth pursuing. Because I think once you commit to it, it somewhat always feels like it has to be worth pursuing, but you also have to be open to making sure it's a sustainable business, which I think maybe that's what differentiates the people who continue to work on something and not. But I think the spiritual piece of it is that because it's so connected to you after a while, because you've been with that idea, it's no longer just this thing that you talked about a month ago. It's now 6 months, and you've read and you've talked and you've pitched, you've gotten feedback. So it has a life of its own. And now it can tell you where it wants to go. And now you can be a little humbler because you know it's not like I had this idea. It's I've been talking with so many people and our idea is getting more refined. And so now you're the steward of a multitude of collaborators that you're putting out to the world. It's quite phenomenal when the idea gets to that stage.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that you connected the dots there. And that's what I'm talking about with thinking and thinking and thinking again, because you're coming up with the first idea. That's probably not it. You have to go back to the drawing board, think again, and then you come back. That's probably not it. You have to think again. And that's what I mean by thinking and thinking. I'm not talking about a guy just sitting at a park and just thinking. No, like I'm talking about iterating the problem and rethinking the problem many, many times until it becomes that final thing. And I love that you're saying it's like a spiritual journey, because truly that's kind of what it is. You fall in love with this thing, but you don't want to fall too much in love with it because you have to allow it. You have to allow. It's like a parent who you fall in love with your kid, but you kind of have to allow the kid to grow. You kind of have to leave the kid to the world a little bit and let the kid get shaped and shaped and shaped. And then the next thing you know, it's like, wow, it took a village for us to build this thing up. And that's what it is.
I mean, I love, I don't know if you know Khalil Gibran.
No.
He writes The Prophet, and his description of parenting is your children are like arrows that you set and let them be free, and the wind kind of takes them. So that description that you just made of like letting the village, it's that. You say, I have an idea, I'm going to pitch it to you guys, and they're all going to give you feedback. Yeah. And by the time it comes to you, it's not the one that you let go. It's now something that you have to like take and reshape into that. It's beautiful. But it's Khalil awesome. Gibran, you would love him.
Yeah, I got to check that out. I want to talk about having an idea and pivoting that into, using the entrepreneurial word pivot. I always like to throw that in there somewhere whenever I can. But, pivoting that to social entrepreneurship and your idea to start JustiGuide. You're talking about how AI became a thing and you're thinking about this AI thing and you're like, all right, I'm going to watch some YouTube videos. I'm going to make something out of it. Preparing for this episode, I learned what you created was called Dolores. Yeah. And that's kind of what's solving this problem that JustiGuide is on a mission to solve with immigration. First of all, I want to give you props for picking such a complicated social problem. I mean, immigration? It is so complicated. Look, it's so complicated that presidents of the United States have to build walls around the U.S. If you don't understand how complicated immigration is, that's what it is. And you pick such a problem to solve. I mean, kudos to you, right? What inspired you to pick immigration? I mean, why not pick something so easy like fast food or something, but you picked the most hardest problem to solve?
Funny enough, I have worked in the fast food space. I worked with Toriana Gordon with Vegan Mob. I came in as a web designer for Vegan Mob. I ended up as a general manager.
Oh, that was supposed to be a joke. I didn't know that was real, but okay, that's good. I like it.
Yeah. I've done a lot of things as an entrepreneur, and it's again, like, I think the unique thing that my background in urban planning has given me really is this ability to think about things that are very complex and again, break them down into ways of solving that. And that's the unique perspective when I compare what we're doing at JustiGuide to everyone else. So just to give you a frame, my solution is, okay, AI, let's build an agent. And what should this agent do? Dolores. Let's think about all the processes that are complicated and who we want to build this agent to help to support. So Dolores immigration law itself is complex.
Yes.
Even the problem with immigration in the United States is that it's under-resourced. There's over 1.3 million lawyers. There's only about 53,000 immigration lawyers. There's around 160 million people trying to come to the U.S. every day.
160 million people?
Yeah, every year. So there's a math problem there, which is how are all these people ever going to even get noticed? And how are they going to get served? And then who is in the immigration court themselves? 4,500 immigration court judges. How many cases have they seen? Over 5,000. Is that even humanly possible? So that is how I broke down the problem. And then it's like, okay, first, let's empower the immigrant with information. Is the US the best place to end up? Because when it took me 9 years, or 8 years to get my green card, and that's the average, like 9 years to get your citizenship. Is that always going to be the best path for everybody? And is it an efficient system? So these are the questions, right? So we built Dolores. Let's simplify immigration law, and let's see if we can help immigrants make better decisions on where to relocate. Then it became, okay, so now we know that every time they are making that decision, they need to put lawyers in the loop. Of course, any startup has all these things that you have to manage. So by giving information to people around law, is that there's something called the unauthorized practice of law. So you want to figure out how to avoid that. So the solution is, let's make sure, because AI has all these contingencies, and we really perfected, like, I would say the first 6 months, we tried all the RAG. I'm going to get a little technical. We tried the retriever augmented generation. We tried to fine tune, and we are like, yeah, we got it pretty good to be able to give good support for the different immigration forms. And we just decided, well, let's make sure that a lawyer is in the loop so that these immigrants are not flying blindly. And so that's how we built the platform, with that step-by-step. Okay, who do we want to support? How do we make it be something that they have access to directly? And how does it kind of give them an end-to-end solution? Right. So from the day that they're thinking about relocating and providing relocation data, to the day that they want to fill the USCIS form and being able to ask for translations, especially if part of the world you're coming from doesn't even have the same framework. Mm-hmm. What is a social security number? Yeah. Do I need that to fill this form? All of those things paralyze any immigrant when they're just coming into the problem without really having been in the US before. So even just that will let someone not even try to solve that problem. So those are the ways that we break down these complexities. And that's what, I think that was the urban planner in me. It's like, this is a great problem to solve methodically, to solve step by step, Yeah. Each guitar, each strum, each vocal take, it's very similar. Each AI agent, each stakeholder, and then building for them, and then bringing them into this body of work.
Yeah. I really love, again, it's such a complex problem that you're solving. So let's think about it this way. I'm an immigrant. I'm in Ghana right now. Mm-hmm. And man, I'm motivated. Not just Ghana, but maybe I'm in Mexico. I'm in Venezuela, where there's a lot of commotion right now. People are probably looking to get out of there. And I say, you know what? I want to go to the US. I've heard about JustiGuide. How is JustiGuide going to help me to get out of this commotion that President Maduro has unfortunately caused in Venezuela, and now I have to get out of there? How is this JustiGuide going to help me?
Yeah, that's, I think let me even answer the question that you proposed earlier before that, which is my experience as an immigrant is my father gave me 2 textbooks when I was leaving to study in the US. He's like, BC, here are 2 textbooks, decide where you should go. I'm like reading, I'm like, oh, Chico, good engineering school. Fresno, great engineering school. I loved the sound of the names. Oh, it sounds like I'm going to California. I'm going to Chico. I'm going to Fresno. Okay. I applied. Those were the places I got in. I called a family friend. He's leaving Brazil, going to Sacramento. He's like, where? You applied to where? Chico? Like in the middle of nowhere, a farm town?
So you're in...
I'm in Nigeria.
Okay. And applying to Chico.
Yeah. I have no visual. There's no Google. It's 2005 or 2006. I don't have, the dial-up internet wasn't that great. So for me, that's the experience 9 years, 13 years afterwards, now in the US, having gone through the process, I'm thinking, what is that story for the immigrant who wants to make that move today? Yeah. And do they have that information? So when we built Relo, it's with that idea. So if you're in Ghana and you're thinking about moving, you go on our platform, you enter JustiGuide and you're like, hey, this is my situation, this is my nationality, and Relo is going to help you. Relo is the AI agent that helps with relocation data. So we put together an agent that has databases on visa wait times, labor statistics, global migration patterns. So it helps you make a better decision whether moving to the US is even the best case for you. Like, what if going to Canada will take you less time, plus housing, plus employment opportunities that you didn't even know. So that's how that person comes into our app and they make a decision. And if the US is where they end up, we have Dolores to kind of take over in terms of connecting them to the right lawyer, helping them fill the right forms. Our goal is, of course, global. So we starting here in the US, but if we start seeing more people wanting to migrate to Canada or to Australia, which we're getting a lot of, the first 48 hours when we launched Relo, which is the direct-to-consumer version of the app, we had over 7,000 users sign up. So it really validated this idea that when an immigrant wants to know where to move, there's just think about the problem. They have to call. There's a time difference. Trying to call a lawyer to help you when you're not even in the country is really hard.
Yes.
Trying to leave a email on their form is hard also. So it really, they start a lot of times very blindly unless you have somebody here, a family member. And that's why it's almost easier to cross illegally, because you figure it out when you get there. But by us giving them that data and that information before they come here, we're seeing that people are making different decisions around where they can start their relocation journeys.
Yeah, I really love this. And you're solving a problem on so many different levels, right? Because, like I said, immigration is such a headache for government. You listen to any presidential debate, and that's probably the big topic, right? Yeah. How are you dealing with immigration? What's going on at the borders? We saw what Trump did when he was president, had to separate literally families and so on.
Yeah.
President Obama had to deport a bunch of immigrants and so on. So it's such a complex problem, but I love that you're sort of approaching this with AI, such a innovative way, more efficient way to solve a problem that the help to the need ratio is just not, it's so disproportionate.
Yeah. And then when we think about how quickly, I like that you keep bringing the politics of this, because it's also the reason it's so challenging, right? Again, going back to why is it so challenging? Mm-hmm. Why is it so complex? It's because people don't understand even the data around immigration.
Yeah.
A lot of people have false assumptions of immigration. They think immigrants are taking their job. False. They think that immigrants are committing crimes. False. They think that immigrants are causing and making their property values low. False. It's the opposite. Immigrants create more jobs. When there are more immigrants, you get more patent. You get more investment. When more immigrants are paying, most of the schools that don't have endowments, most of the international students actually allow those schools to fund their research. So we've made this mistake before. About 100 years ago in 1924, we did the National Origins Act, where the Western Europeans were kind of against the Eastern Europeans and the Irish, and saying that these are people who don't provide anything, they're labor, unskilled labor. And to me, when I started to read about this, I started to really understand this is why it's fragmented. You have 70% of people who have positive impacts from immigration. And then the 30% of people who don't are the ones that make the loudest noise.
Of course, that's how it works.
And it's sad because the minority is almost acting without data.
Yeah.
And when they finally get their way, the repercussions is going to be really unhealthy and dangerous to us.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important to make people aware that we've made this mistake before, and it makes it so urgent to not make this mistake again.
Yeah.
What I think is missing now is being able to have this conversation from a data-driven perspective.
Yes.
To be able to actually capture the value, right? So as an international student, I came here, I was paying all these high fees in school. Now San Francisco gets the luck of me being a successful entrepreneur here, being able to pay for, taxes and pay, home taxes. But that's not the truth for every immigrant. A lot of that value is lost along the way while we're thinking, but still, if we talk about the 10.5 million undocumented immigrants that are still paying taxes to this country and not entitled to any benefits, what's gonna happen if you mass deport all those people? like during his time, we already saw a increase in our debt. So there's all of the math that is not quite adding up when we're talking about immigration, and we're just trying to let people know it's like that's what we see as the end of this is we can efficiently move people around.
Yeah.
We can help people settle and thrive in those places, and those cities, those states, and those countries can actually benefit from this magic that immigrants do, because it's nothing short of magical, to be honest. When you think about the jobs that they create, the ways that they don't call landlords because they feel so lucky to have found a house. So they're like doing everything themselves, increasing the property value by a percentage. There's all these studies, but people are not seeing that because it's so politicized. Yeah. So I hope that as we continue to bring this to the forefront, which is why we decided to host a conference next year. It's called the Navigate Summit. And we're bringing people together so that we can have these conversations around what other things do we need to build separate from getting the immigrants here and helping them settle. What else do we need to build? How can we create advocacy around this to make it better? So Navigate is a summit coming to San Francisco in 2025, and we're really excited to also propagate that conversation. And again, that is a big element of who I am, bringing people together, being a convener. So it became almost apparent that this is what we needed to do with JustiGuide, separate from the product, bringing people to the product and bringing people to the conversation.
Yeah, I love that. And could you share any success stories that have come out of JustiGuide already? I know you shared a little bit, like your own story is a success story in itself, right? Starting from Nigeria, looking at Chico, it's like, oh my God, I'm here. Like you don't even know what Chico looks like, right? You don't have any information, but share some success stories that, JustiGuide has been able to achieve so far.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think for the 7,000 users that we have, I think they're using it. Just this month, we had over 20,000 requests. So it's, I think people are making decisions and connecting to the right places through our platform. We're very excited to launch a partnership with the Latin Advocacy Network, where we're going to be using JustiGuide to help about 1,500 unaccompanied minors to fill the form. So a lot of the people that the legal aid and nonprofit organizations support are people who sometimes have to leave their jobs to fill these forms, come to San Francisco, which is they're taking time off a job or a position that, they're not necessarily allowed to. Mm-hmm. So being able to do this on a platform where they can just voice to text, fill their form, have a lawyer or have Claudia go through it is exciting, and so we're excited to hear these stories, and we're excited to grow and scale that impact.
Yeah, and I can see this continue to grow because this is a big need. And if someone is listening to us right now, maybe they have a particular social problem or an idea, something that maybe they're passionate about and they want to solve. It's probably a really difficult problem. What would you tell them?
I think talk to people about it. Talk to people, and the more complex or the bigger the problem, the better chance of succeeding you have, because people will help you and people will resonate that. And that's the thing that has kept me going through this build, is because the entrepreneurial journey is not all success stories. There's just hills and valleys, right? And the more I talked with the people, the more connected I got to our customers and the challenges that they were going through, the clearer it became that this was inevitable, that we needed to be the ones to step up and solve this problem, because we were hearing from them every day. The customer advisory, we had 25 different lawyers like, hey, what is your workflow like? Where's the challenge? Where are the gaps? The immigrants, hey, here's a prototype. What are you asking? So the more connected we got to the problem, the more people we spoke to about it, the more it just became clear how to do it better, how to actually meet people and provide value. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Talk to people. It's so important. And one thing that you talked about that I kind of want to highlight is, I keep saying this thing where if you ever come across a path where one leads to the left, the other leads to the right.
Okay.
One is the easy path, one is the hard. Go the hard way.
Yeah.
If you take the easy path, you're just going to meet too many people on that path, it might not be worth solving that problem. So if you're listening to Basie's advice right now, take the hard way. This man took immigration, and you heard that? 7,000 users. That's awesome.
In 48 hours, our system crashed. We didn't even have authentication.
That's insane. You understand what I'm saying? It's such a difficult problem. Even presidents of the United States haven't been able to figure it out.
Yeah.
And look, these presidents are not some geniuses, but they have resources. When I tell you resources at their fingertips, they have them, and they haven't been able to solve these problems.
Yeah.
It's just so complicated. If you come across a problem to solve as an aspiring entrepreneur, I'm telling you, don't take the easy path. Take the hard one.
Yes.
It's going to be hard. Take your time. Talk to people. Look, like you said, petit, right?
La petit.
Petit la petit.
Oiseau fait son nez.
Oiseau fait son nez. I'm learning some French today. All right. So, man, I love that. But talk about social entrepreneurship, right? Because, you know, a lot of people think when you're solving social problems, you don't make money. Is that true?
No, I think it's harder too, because especially in the Silicon Valley, like I think not even in the capitalism. I think when you start thinking about social problems, people often want to ask how do you make money? Who's paying for it?
Yeah.
And it forces you to do and bring your creativity into the space, because you're saying, yeah, like I think this is worth solving. Like think about EV, think about solar. These were problems that were needed to solve. And if people avoided it because they didn't think it was going to make money in the beginning, we'll still be so behind on the technology. So I think ultimately in the beginning, there's that concern because it's not clear. You're opening up a new market. The complexity is apparent. But that's where the opportunity lies. Because if you're able to bring those people who have not ever had an opportunity to use a platform like JustiGuide, right? You're bringing I think it's like 50% of people in the United States don't want to interact with lawyers. So this is even people who have money don't trust lawyers because they're like, what are they going to do? They're just going to charge me enough.
Yeah.
So by us making it easier for people to get the information and even educate themselves, it's easier to ask for help. So we're bringing and changing behavior and opening a new market. And that becomes a sustainable business. So it is harder, but it allowed us to kind of challenge ourselves to how can we provide value and how can we engage more people so that we can, make this sustainable.
Yeah.
Because ultimately that's the creativity, I think, as an entrepreneur that you have to do is, can you make a business that is sustainable?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is important to talk about, right? Because we're talking about building wealth through entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And so you're not necessarily, spending all your time, your resources, your own money and so on, or even venture money to say, sure, I'm just going to be Santa Claus and just solve a problem without getting paid for it. Thinking about how your idea is going to make money is a very, very important part of this whole thing that we're talking about.
Your main job as the CEO is finding how to pay the people that end up joining your team to work on it and making sure that their time is valued. And especially in this space where we're trying to do something different from what people expect in the nonprofit space, from the for-profit space, you're like, okay, how do I change the model? Right? Because you don't want to be exploitative, especially when we're talking about solving for immigrants. We want to connect immigrants. We want immigrants to live better lives. We want to help them thrive. So that culture starts with our company, And so, yeah, it's a huge part of what you have to do as a founder and a CEO. And it's not easy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You got to make the money, or we know what happens if you don't. So speaking more, while we're talking about the topic of money solves a lot of problems.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so as an entrepreneur, how has sort of like your money story been formed, right? And when I talk about money story, I'm talking about how you think about money, whether it's the abundance of it or the scarcity of it. Because as an entrepreneur, being able to have a good psychology of money becomes really important in how you position your business and the people that work for you, and ultimately being able to actually build that wealth with that business that you create?
Yeah, that is. I think you shared some insights which I thought was very great to reflect on. It's like what time in our lives is that idea formed? And for me, I feel fortunate. My father and mother were people who demonstrated the soul of money to me, being that it was always a tool to help people. My father was with very little was supporting his brothers, basically got everyone through school. We always had an extended family living with us. My mom always picked, even some of her students became, like extended families with us. So this idea that money was always a tool to help people and to make the world better was, imbued in me at a very young age. When I think about my journey from busking to being in San Francisco, founding companies, I think that drive comes from that idea that if I want to make the world a better place, I have to do better so that I can bring more people up. I have to walk through the door so that I can bring more people in. And that's something that still drives a lot of, the ways that I think about what this company is going to be in the future, and the ways that I want to support the Black Futures, which is an event series that I started when I was thinking about how do we get more money into underrepresented communities. And so it's something that I constantly think about, because for me, that is the reason for money.
Yeah. I love that you talk about, being able to go through the door and leave that door open to bring other people with you, because it's really important, especially when we're talking about the psychology of money, right? You're pouring so much of your resources into this thing that you're starting. And then not only are you doing that, but you're also bringing others along with you. Yeah. So important, especially in our community. Yeah. I was reading a statistic today that kind of struck me so hard. It said it's going to take 3 centuries for the Black American to have the quality of life that the white American has. Brother, 3 centuries. A century, 100 years, bro. A century. Yeah. That's insane. Yeah. Man. And so it's staggering. And the article went further to say the average Black American family's net worth was about $8, which is insane. Yeah. Guess what it was for the white American? $250,000. Yeah. Look at that staggering difference, though. Yeah. It's just,
I think when we think about what we're really going through in this country, like at the core of our politics is exactly that. Are we a culture, or are we a society that is going to continue to put people who have been historically marginalized, continue to put them under? Mm-hmm. And that's another problem that I think we're addressing with immigration. Yeah. Because immigration means investment. So you have to bring the money from the outside, because the money that is here is not going to get diluted or shared in that way. And it's unfortunate, but we can just use any data points to research that. How much VC money is going to certain types of people, right? Like you can look at that data point, and then you can think about the prison industrial complex. So you can just do some research around that. So it's very clear that it is easier to keep some groups. There's 61% of people in the United States are poor. That is a high number for a first world country, a developed country. Yeah. And the challenges that we deal with in this country are healthcare, education, and housing. Yeah. So it is at the core of, I think, social entrepreneurship is how do we shift that? How do we make impactful investments? How do we invest in our communities? And it's not an easy problem to solve. And that's why I think that there should be more people. And I'm seeing our young billionaires, especially in the sports and the athletic space, starting to become aware of it. Our successful musicians starting to become aware of it, and they're opening funds, even though that the politicians are kind of pushing against that. But I think that is what needs to happen. And it's something that we have to close that gap. Yeah. And that is the race. 300 years? Heck no. We need to make it happen faster. And having conversations like this and what you're building is a good way to bring that at the forefront.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you as well. And I bring up these statistics, and I know I talk about these types of things on the podcast very often, but I don't want to paint a gloom picture. That's not my idea. I don't want people to feel like, oh my God, this is such a burden. It's a yoke on my neck. No, that's not my point. That's not my intention. My intention is to bring your attention to it so you know what you're up against. And to your point, there are people that are actually looking to close this gap as quickly as possible. This article that I'm talking about was actually highlighting Jaylen Brown, who is on the Boston Celtics, and how he's looking to rebuild that Black Wall Street. That's what this article was actually highlighting, and that's why I read these statistics. And so people are looking to solve these problems. That's what we're looking to do at GWP as well. Providing you with that relevant information to hopefully quickly close that gap. And so I'm glad we're talking about this stuff, and we're going to continue to talk about it. But not only are we talking about it, but also giving you the tools and the resources to actually take action and solve these problems. Same way you're, providing tools with Relo, Dolores, JustiGuide to help people to be able to actually solve these problems and close these gaps. So thank you as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. And, just to add a little something to that, which is, I think that there's nothing more important than getting financial support of a financial advisor when it comes to building wealth. And I think that in our community, that is also part of the lack, right? Which is you started making some money and you're just putting in a savings account and you're like, I'm not going to pay somebody else with the small amount that I have to tell me how to make more money. And I think that approach is it's nice. It's small, it's not the way you want to. The moment you start building anything that is worth over $1,000 a month, you should just start asking more people who have done it before and bringing people in your corner to help you do better with it, because it all adds up. It all adds up, like small investments, use things like Acorn, just like understand a little bit more around what options you have, invest outside of the US, so that curiosity, I think, shouldn't end, because it is how we can break out of the community, and the system is built to always shorthand you. As an artist, I live that. You people who make significant amount of money will convince you to just play for free because of exposure, and that's the way that the artists and a lot of the great musicians that we know today ended up with very little or nothing. So it is always been the instrument of the system to not pay you what you're worth. And by understanding your finances, it becomes undeniable what you're worth, because and that communication gets better because you're talking from a space of clarity versus guesstimation or statistic.
Yeah. No, that's so important. And thank you so much for sharing that. So when we started a podcast, I talked about how you're a multifaceted person. We've talked about entrepreneurship. We've talked about money.
Yep.
We've talked about
music.
We've talked about music a little bit. Now, one thing we haven't talked about yet is your book.
Oh, yeah.
Let's dive into that. So you wrote a book which is called Youroba People. Tell me about that book. First of all, I love the cover of the book.
Thank you.
It's so beautiful. It's amazing. I don't have a copy yet.
Oh, don't worry. We'll get you one.
Yes, absolutely. But I took a look and I said, Youroba People. Interesting.
Yeah.
So I started doing some research. In fact, I actually listened to some of your music.
Thank you.
On YouTube.
I speak a lot of Yoruba in my music.
Yeah.
I'll throw some words here and there.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And then I explored the book, saw the cover. I'm like, wow, this is so intriguing. So tell us about the book. What inspired you to write that book?
Yeah. So the book, again, I think I started alluding to it, which is growing up, I understand my culture, but when you grow up in something, how much do you really understand what it is?
Yeah.
Right? It's like if you never live Nigeria. You just identify. It's just an identity. I'm just a Yoruba person. But what does it mean to be a Yoruba person? And then you come to the US and then you start to interact with different kinds of people. And then this question about your identity becomes more intriguing. So I think the big thing for me was, of course, I wanted to understand the music. Of course, I wanted to understand what my ancestors' dreams were. But I think the more I started learning about history, the more I wanted to know about my history. Pre-colonial Africa, pre-colonial Nigeria, what did it look like? I don't believe that Africans didn't contribute to a lot of what we know today. In fact, I think the opposite. I think some of these stories, because we all originated from that part of the world, began there, because that's how we started to learn. That's how we started to translate and move through the world and like make learnings of what we understood about the known world at the time. So that's where the curiosity for the book started. I was making a song with Gavin Hardkiss in 2019. We wrote this album called The Spirit of Pinboy, and it was like, okay, let's make a music video. I was like, you know what? I watched this movie when I was young. It was called Shango. Like, that was pretty cool. He was the god of thunder, the god of drums. Like, that's interesting. That's very similar to the Greek gods. Like, let me just start checking about that. So I started talking to my dad. I'll ask him, okay, so what type of festivals did you go to when you were young? Oh, the Festival of Yams. Oh, okay. So your dad, so I started having these curiosities around like just my family and my heritage and like the chiefs and how we got our last names. So then I was like, ooh, this is really juicy. Started ordering books. There's a good documentary called Bigger Than Africa, which is the story of the Yoruba people. It's one of the languages that moved with the slave trade. And there's now, it's what ended up with the religion Santeria. It is the religion that most Afro-Latinas practice. It's bigger than Africa. It was like preserved in the United States, and there's parts of the United States in Florida that people still wear their Yoruba garb and have passed it from generation to generation. So the spirituality of the Yoruba people is at the core of my curiosity. And after doing all this research, I bought a few books. And then, like I said, I was like, okay, I can't keep looking at screens for freaking 8 hours a day. I'm going to spend 17 minutes a day to write down this thing that I've always wanted to do. So it became a preservation project, again, because of my curiosity around AI. Can AI actually understand my language? How do we preserve that? Because a lot of the stories of Yoruba people are in Yoruba people's heads, and those people are in the village, and those villagers don't use the internet. So I just kind of like had this moment where I was like, hold on, I wanna try and like test this. I want to preserve what I know now about my culture in this new technology, because it would be a shame to lose that. So it became a preservation project. It became a project on history. It became a project on fantasy and mythology, building these gods that I was learning about into be characters that we can make movies about, that the 1 million people who are leaving Nigeria every year can find their stories even outside of Nigeria, just the same way I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so amazing. That's so inspiring for me, man. I'm going to Ghana in a few weeks.
Hey.
And you're gonna make me go to the villages and start talking to these villages.
You got to.
I have to figure out where did that last name come from.
Yeah. Are you Ashanti? Have you done some genetics?
That part I know.
Okay.
Because I was born in Ghana.
Oh. Yeah. Oh my God.
I was born in Ghana. I grew up in Ghana till I was about 16, 17. Actually 17. I moved here.
Oh my God. You and I.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I'm pretty connected in that sense, and it took me a little while to go back to Ghana after I moved here.
Yeah.
But once I went back, I was like, all right, it's never going to take me that long to come back again. And so now I go more often. Last year I didn't go, but I'm going now. Before that, the year before I went, and then I went again.
Amazing.
So yeah, now I got a streak. Very soon I'm just gonna be going there every weekend. But,
Oh,
those are dreams.
well, they're gonna. Yeah, it's probably gonna be some plane or some. You're gonna get really rich, and then you're gonna be able to charter your jet. And
right.
in order to close this billion gap that we're talking about, you're gonna be flying people back and forth.
Exactly.
You got your own airline.
That's the dream, right? We got JustiGuide with the immigration. So when you get to the airport, JustiGuide is gonna get you taken care of.
Yep.
But before you get to the airport, you're gonna get on the Papa Jet and make sure you get there.
Exactly.
Man, I love these dreams. I'm getting excited. Man, Bissy, thank you so much for coming onto GWP. This has been such a wonderful conversation.
Oh, man.
I wonder, is there any part of, our conversation today that you wanted to talk about that maybe we haven't talked about yet today?
Well, I'm super honored to be here, and also just like this idea that you want to empower people with financial wisdom is powerful. And this idea, this has been mutually inspiring to reflect back, because when you're going through it, you don't. So this opportunity to reflect back on this and to be doing it with another brother who we have, again, I'm learning more about you. And I'm saying, wow, our stories are so intertwined.
Yeah.
So it's inevitable that we would have met, and I'm honored that we met, and I'm glad that you initiated this and had me on. So thank you so much. And I look forward to your success story and continue to listen to this podcast and all the inspiring people you bring.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. And if anyone is listening to us who wants to connect with you and maybe continue this conversation with you, is there a way they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Check out www.busybc.com. It's where a lot of my artistic endeavors live. My book links are there. My music is on there, and my website has a chat, so you can drop me a line, ask questions. I'm also very active on LinkedIn for professional stuff around JustiGuide, around immigration, around navigate, and just all around my global visions. I write a lot of blogs in that space, and my Substack is on there. So connect with me, and let's keep the conversation going.
Yeah, and so one thing we like to ask every single guest that comes onto GWP is, what is your definition of wealth?
Oh, I think we touched on it. It's like the ability to walk through that door and bring people in. Do what my parents did, which is give more people the opportunity to better themselves, and and elevate the people that are around us. That's it.
I love that. And my last question for you: you're also a DJ.
Yeah. Yep.
Man, tell us about that, because I think DJing is really cool, man. Like you get to control the crowd, and you do that, and then everyone starts dancing and stuff. Tell us about DJing, man. How's that experience so far?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think DJing, entrepreneurship. I'm taking pieces of like learning to read people, being able to adapt quickly, being able to create experiences. Musically, right? That's where people are reveled in joy. I feel ultimately so grateful. I think, I've been an artist, a musician for so long, and by the time DJing came into being, it was like, I think it was at a festival, I had an open decks, and I was just playing music, and I was like, wow, like sharing my music with people was another way to like connect with people, because I'm like, yeah, I'm Nigerian, and like here's our sound, here's what brings me joy, and to see people reflect that. So it's been a great journey for me. I spin a lot of Afro Latin house. It's again going back to the mixing of our cultures and the history around those rhythms. It's powerful. It's spiritual, and I love doing it. I do it pretty frequently, so you can find it on my website. I'm just honored that I've been able to cultivate that skill, and it's a practice, so I'm still owning it.
Yeah.
I
love that. And one last one, piece of advice for young Bissy.
Oh, don't dim your light, because your unique perspective is what's gonna drive the curiosity to bring something completely innovative to whatever it is that you're putting your mind into. I just imagine if I didn't pursue music, how hard it would have been to connect or be able to succeed at being an entrepreneur. So follow your intuition, because people will try to guide you. But I heard a good saying recently is, if you want to be lost, ask everybody for advice. Not everybody's advice is important to what you want to do. So you have to have that natural, like, go inward to really find which direction you should be going, and then enroll people once you're going that direction.
Yeah. And I also heard a really good piece of advice today.
Okay.
And it is, don't dim your light.
Don't dim your light.
I love it. Missy, thank you so much for coming on.
It's
been a pleasure.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much. Thanks for listening. Thanks for having me.
Peace.
Peace out.